It's changing, so that's going to be a good thing. Either we're either working really well or it's about to happen. So give a second to go. Awesome. Hey everybody, Robbie Breaux here. We've got Tracey Lassere over at Assurance Financial, and today we're going to talk about protecting your credit. Lots of things going on out in the market right now. Identity theft being a real big thing going on, and one of the things that I wanted to kind of bring up and jump into was, some of the things that I hear from buyers is, we're not ready to pull our credit because fill in the blank. And, I think one of the things that it's really important for people to be able to do, because this is something that's actually happened to me, is checking to make sure, I like to call it ready, aim, fire instead of ready, fire, aim. You don't want to find a house and then get your loan because something may have popped up and you weren't quite ready.
Right. So, and I had it happen to me as well. So what's good is, and what I tell my clients is, a credit report stays good for 4 months. So from the day the credit is pulled to the day you close, you have 4 months before your credit expires from a lender's aspect. So whether you think you are going to buy a house tomorrow or next year, the time to pull credit is now. And I have a personal example as well. A few years ago, I bought a car, had no issues, everything was great, took me all of an hour. And about 3 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail from Capital One Auto Finance saying, sorry, we're unable to approve you for your auto loan. And I obviously freaked out. My credit needs to be good because, I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't. So I did my research. I pulled my credit immediately. And there was a $7,800 car repossession under the collection section on my credit report. It was obviously not mine. Okay, so I had to do all the research. I had to employ a company to figure out what had happened, why it happened, and then how to get rid of it. So keep in mind, I'm in the business, and I have, the means to get this removed pretty efficiently. It still took me 3 weeks to get it removed. Come to find out, the collection belonged to a guy who lived in Texas for a Dodge Durango. And somewhere between the original creditor and the collection agency, they transposed 2 numbers on his social, and I inherited. Yes, and I inherited his bad debt. Just that easy. So had I been in the market to buy a house or anything else for that matter, I would have been in trouble because that dropped my score 150 points.
Yeah,
just like that.
You went either from amazing rate to denied.
Right. Or terrible rate.
Or to terrible rate.
Yeah, and trying to explain why I have an auto repo, a recent auto repo when I'm trying to qualify for a mortgage. So it happens. Mistakes happen. Fraud happens. And that brings me to another topic is...
Actually, I want to jump in because this is one thing that I hear a good bit. I hear a lot, I don't want to pull my credit because I'm afraid it's going to negatively affect my score. So let's go and dive into that a little bit deeper.
So a credit pull, like a hard credit pull, which is what we do to get you pre-qualified to purchase a home, affects your score by a very, very, very small percentage. And if you have great credit, you won't even notice the difference. If it changes your score by a point or 2, that would be the max. Where you do see score changes happen, and I see this every day, and this is what I explain to my clients, is let's say I pull your credit, and then you're monitoring your credit, and you get a notification that your score dropped by X number of points. Most people automatically want to go back and say, oh, that's because you pulled your credit. But 9 times out of 10, or really most of the time, that's not what happened. It's typically they had an overutilization of revolving credit, so credit cards. So balance versus limit on credit cards is a huge, huge factor when it comes to credit scores. So most people think, oh, I pay my bills on time every month for years. My credit should be excellent. But if your balance on your credit card is $2,000, but your limit is $2,500, that's going to negatively affect your credit. So in most situations, the credit score went down because they had an overutilization of their revolving credit. And that's always what I hear.
They said, the most recent thing that I remember was I had, my lender go and pull my credit.
Exactly, and that's what they contribute that drop in score to be, when that's typically not the case.
Gotcha. Well, good. I want to make sure we jump that out the way.
A great point.
So we talked about identity theft. For me, I had I actually had a credit card opened under Justice, this was 7 years ago or 10 years ago with which is Little Girls Clothing, Crate and Barrel. Most of the stores I hadn't even heard of all these things, and I was actually looking to buy a house, and then it basically slowed me down on that particular house and cut me out altogether. And I share this with people all the time. So just jumping in front of it kind of helps being able to, like I said, ready, aim, fire instead of ready, fire, aim.
Right.
You can see any of the obstacles that you have to deal with on the front end to be able to get there. But we talk about identity theft, so, probably jump in. Basically, identity theft is...
Well, we're doing more and more online. We're shopping online. Groceries are being delivered. You prime everything, and our information is out there. And we need to be very cautious with our personal, private information. One piece of advice I give clients, friends, family is, don't use your debit card, first of all, really anywhere except your ATM, because that's your money sitting in an account that someone can just take at any given moment. So make sure when you're online, use a credit card, because it was probably pretty easy for you to get those charges reversed.
Right.
Because, if it was on a credit card.
Right.
Yeah. Because the credit card companies are insured. So they will reimburse that money. Most of the time they pick up the fraud before you even notice it. And they reverse the charges. So, but sometimes they do open accounts just under your name, which can be scary. So how do you prevent that? How do you monitor it? How do you watch for it? First of all, you should probably get your credit pulled, or pull your credit every 12 months. You can go to freecreditreport.org and do a free pull there. Now that's not going to give you a score, but really all you're trying to do is monitor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of major credit cards will give you a free FICO score with it. I know my credit card gives me a free credit score every month, so I know if my credit score dropped, something happened, and I need to pull my credit to see what's on there. Credit freezing, locking and unlocking your credit is something that's really big right now. You can, as a consumer, you can freeze your credit.
How long does that take? Is that like a click of a button?
It can be, depending on how you do it. So what's great is the 3 repositories, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, have phone apps that are free that you can download. And it can be as simple as clicking a button to freeze, click a button to unfreeze. So the 3 apps to look for: Equifax has Lock and Alert, Experian has Identity Works, and TransUnion has My TransUnion. And
we'll put the links to each one in the comments below after the video, so everybody can have access to these resources. So
yeah, so you can go on there and at the click of a button freeze and unfreeze your credit. Another good suggestion is the people we don't think about who do have the potential to have fraud happen to them, or our children. Yeah, exactly. So our kids have socials. From the day they're born, a social is immediately assigned to them, and they can be victims. And when would you ever have the need to pull your kid's credit? Never. Not until they become an adult.
Well, they use them for tax. They'll use them for tax returns.
Right.
They'll use them for all kind of crazy stuff.
All kinds of things. So I advise, and this is something that we practice, is lock your kids' credit, which you can very, very easily do with the 3 bureaus, with the 3 repositories. The big point with that is you're going to get a PIN number assigned from each bureau for that individual, and you have to keep that PIN number secure, and you have to know where it is, because if your child is 5 and 13 years from now, if you want your child when they turn 18 to develop credit, buy a car, you want them to be able to unlock their credit. Well, if you don't have that PIN number, it is very difficult to unlock your credit, as it should be, because it's secure for a reason,
Right.
So my advice is lock your children's credit, save the PIN number, put it in your safe, and
safety deposit box, whatever.
Anything, a place where you can easily find it down the road. You haven't forgotten where you put it, so that you can unlock it later. For people like us who, may need to use credit a little more often, then at that point we should use a tool through the repositories where you can quickly freeze and unfreeze the credit. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference between those two. There's a lot of confusion between freezes and locks. They work similarly, But locks can sometimes have a monthly fee, and freezes are guaranteed by federal law. That's something that you could fight. You're protected. So those are the things that I practice, that I try to educate my borrowers on, so that they don't become victim of either identity theft or just mistakes, and
Right.
you can catch those mistakes ahead of time.
See, we talked a little bit about the freezes. What about things like fraud alerts?
Mm-hmm. You can set up fraud alerts too. Again, through the repositories. When Equifax had their big breach, they're giving you the option to set up, I think, for a 6-year period, free fraud alerts where they monitor your credit and they'll notify you. But fraud alerts are free in general, and that's something that should be added as well. That way, if something happens, you get notification immediately, so you can act immediately before it gets too far and it becomes a real problem. So the last thing you want is to not look at your credit for 5 years and then say, I want to put an offer in on a house tomorrow, and then someone like me pulls credit,
or
and you're like,
a cell phone or something,
right. Or insurance or anything, and you're like, wait, pump the brakes. You have all these collections or all this outstanding debt that it's negative and it's bad, and the consumer says, that's not me. Well, then what do? You're not buying a house anytime soon. You've got to get all this stuff fixed. I see it happen a lot with tax returns, where people have fraudulently filed tax returns under someone else's name and social, and that can be a big ordeal to go through and to fix, because at that point, for the rest of your life, you have to file your tax returns with a very specific, unique identifier and go through a specific channel to file. You can't just file with your CPA, they electronically file, and you're done. You have all these special numbers you have to use, and it's more time consuming and involved. So lots of reasons to protect yourself, not only yourself, your family, children included, parents, even parents who maybe they're retired and they have no need to go out and buy another house or open lines of credit. They need to protect themselves as well, because you just never know what's going on out there.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, you've got some of these things for fraud alerts too. You've got Xander out there, which does like it's another version of LifeLock, which is a monthly thing. They'll kind of keep you in touch if you're not somebody that goes and checks every now and then. Credit Karma, I know we hear a good bit about them taking a look at that.
Credit Karma does monitor. It's very affordable. Again, you don't get the scores unless you pay a little bit more for that, but the whole point of that is to monitor the activity that's on your credit report. And then again, going back to the credit cards, that's how I monitor my credit. If I see my credit score go down, my credit card's going to tell me the reasons why it did and all the items that affect my credit score on a monthly basis. So if I know I went from here to here, something happened.
Right.
And I need to figure out what it was.
Dig into the details a little bit more.
Exactly. So point is, download the free apps from the bureaus, freeze your credit. If you're someone who is in the market to buy for any reason or have your credit pulled for any reason. And then if you're, minors to seniors, they should probably be on have their credit locked.
When you're unfreezing too, one other thing to kind of think about, it's not just to buy a car or buy a house or any of that stuff. You'll need to unfreeze for insurance. You'll need to unfreeze for phone,
all of that
you'll
stuff.
Need to unfreeze.
If you want to rent an apartment, they're going to do a credit check.
So having all that stuff readily
Jobs.
available, jobs is another thing.
Yeah.
They're looking for. I know, like in the mortgage industry, you've got a few things that show up on your credit report. You do not get a job.
That is
Period.
a big problem.
End of story.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
no, do not pass go.
And if you think you are a victim of identity theft, you can go to identitytheft.gov to report and to get a recovery plan, and that's free. So if you do think you've been a victim, I would start there. In addition to calling the creditors who the accounts were opened fraudulently to figure out, what a good game plan is. So.
Perfect. You see if we have any comments or anything like that, questions?
I can't tell from here.
Can't tell from that particular screen. Gotcha. We'll double check if you guys have any questions on that. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
That's it.
Awesome.
Yeah, we do pull credit for free at Assurance Financial. So if you, whether you think you're in the market for a house today or next year, and you just want to see what does my credit look like, are there any errors on credit? Is there any fraud on my credit report? Or I don't know enough about credit. I want to get educated. Or my credit's okay, but how do I improve it? Give me a call.
Plan for all that stuff.
A plan. So. It's free. We don't charge for credit pulls. And this is our way of preparing you for the home buying process.
And one of the nice things too, whenever you're, if you're right on that cusp, it could be like denial or approval, but it could also be the difference between getting from, mid sixes to upper sevens, which could improve your rate and save you a ton of money later on down the line. So getting that there, even if you're not ready right now, it just being ahead of the game for when it is time to pull the trigger. You could save yourself that much more money, assuming rates stay where they are, which is another topic all on its own. So.
Topic for another video.
That's right.
But it's planning for the future so that you can take advantage of a good situation.
Awesome. We'll leave Tracey's contact info in the comments below too for you guys, along with everything else for Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, all the contacts, email addresses, phone numbers, all that fun stuff, the apps, everything like that will be in the comments below. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much, Tracey.
Thanks.